Hello YouTube, welcome to TFJ Vlogs. TFJ stands for the Fractal Journal, which is a website that I operate based on WordPress. It's where I upload stories, essays, little bits of analysis, etc. I call it integrative analysis because basically I just take bits and pieces of things, juxtapose them, and use that information to form fictional stories, do non-fictional stories, just all kinds of fun stuff from a variety of mediums as well. Music, drawing, etc. So, go on and check it out at www.fractaljournal.com. But since I'm talking about looking at things in different ways, of course, we come to the subject, the inevitable subject of big data, that very trendy thing that's going on that really I just have a very basic grasp on. A couple of years ago, I read a book by Cukier and Schonbergs, someone of that name anyway, who are both, I think, some kind of Ivy League professors. But they addressed both the promise and the challenge of the big data thing that's going on. Really what big data is, as the name implies, large sets of data that require the need for novel ways of analyzing, which is generally provided through computing power, but then of course you have to develop methodologies to use that computing power effectively to glean information relevant to whatever your enterprise happens to be. Yeah, so it gets really spooky and Orwellian with things like what Tim Pool has recently reported on, where he was in a store and he saw a deal for a TV that was really good. He buys that TV. His brother, who was also in the store with him, gets an ad for that very same television. How all that went down algorithmically, I don't know. But there definitely are those sorts of applications, and some kind of like beacon technology is potentially something that's going on where a certain word that you say in the vicinity of your phone is logged and then taken through a marketing database and kind of, your profile and blah, and then, it's regurgitated at you. At least that's the idea of it that I got. Now, I'm not going to go so much into all of the technical aspects because frankly, I'm not qualified. I will attempt to educate myself on that matter further, but it's going to take some time. What I will say is kind of more philosophical. I think that the answer to a lot of the issues that will arise from this and that have arisen from this will not come from technology. They'll come from policy and law, which is why I'm somewhat heartened to have seen the CEO of AT&T talk about the need for an internet bill of rights that guarantees the privacy of citizens, etc. I've long considered these things to be very odd, especially when they happen in the United States, that our essential rights to privacy can be infringed upon in such an egregious manner. For instance, the whole beacon hypothesis of this stuff is just being marketed to you, etc., etc. Now, I don't necessarily think it's evil. I just think it's something that arises out of people trying to use a new technology to further their various enterprises. It's just what it is. But it has to be controlled and regulated. And a lot of people are not fans of that because they have a libertarian bent or etc. And I totally understand it and agree. I think that government should be limited as much as possible. But government, in order to have a place where you can actually have a sphere of interaction with other businesses, will always become necessary, even if it isn't the sort of government that we have now. There will emerge a system of governance which for all intents and purposes is going to be pretty similar to the government we have now. So that whole argument is kind of moot in my opinion. But anyway, So this data that's being mined has a lot of implications in terms of both pros and cons, good uses and ill uses. And in order to prevent the ill uses from occurring, that framework, that legal framework that's already there, that has been broken, needs to be solidified and made more robust. This is the eternal challenge of the practice of implementing law and of keeping a society flowing. Yeah, it's just going to take a lot of different people from different disciplines coming together and figuring this out. The first step is, of course, awareness and dissemination of information to the general public, which is what I am attempting to do here. And I would also like to thank Tim Pool for all the work he's done in this regard, because I found out about this AT&T CEO statement from him just today, and it brought my attention back to this whole big data deal that's going on. Like one instance, which was probably already in the popular imagination, was Target algorithmically figured out that a girl was pregnant based on her purchasing habits and began sending all kinds of coupons and things to the house, which then led the father to discover that she was in fact pregnant. So this predictive capacity has a whole range of effects, like the one I just mentioned, and also it has the effect of, because it works in certain instances like this, of this basic inference of, hey, you know, if a girl is going to a store and buying XYZ baby products, but she does not yet have a child, or things related to childbirth anyway, yeah, I mean, that doesn't take a genius or a computer to figure out. It might take a computer to extrapolate that data from a database of, you know, someone's transactional history. But what happens with this stuff is people begin to get magical notions of it. They think, this has experienced success, and it's a certainty, it's math, it's the numbers. Well, numbers, as Cukier and Schonbergs point out, don't really have that solid of a history. Interpretive frameworks, given valid numbers, valid interpretive frameworks, will yield positive results, but even then, they must be subject to scrutiny, especially when dealing with huge multivariate systems. And the main concern with big data, this is really big data, of having not only like large data sets of a population, but large interlocking data sets, which then can lead to a host of misinterpretations and misuses. For instance, there was some company that I just read about, I think in this Harvard magazine article here, which I think it was a bank, and they would predict which clients to give loans to or who would be more likely to repay based upon purchases of those little coasters you put underneath your furniture to keep it from scuffing up your rug and stuff. So basically, the demonstration of conscientiousness through that purpose seemed to have a correlative effect to fastidious economic habits. Now, here's the exploitation for that for somebody that has found out about this. There's a guy who is kind of like me, not exactly always on the ball with money because they're kind of artsy and don't really pay attention. But then they find out about this and they start doing things like going out to Target and buying those little scuffy coaster marks, and then they eventually, after a year, make themselves look a little bit more appealing algorithmically, walk into a bank, screw them over. And this is a total hypothetical that really wouldn't work, but it's what I'm working with right now as I'm sketching out this idea, this kind of world that we're all on the cusp of. So I would suggest that you take the information I've given you here, mull it over, do your own background reading. I'll provide links below. And thanks so much for listening. Have a great time wherever time finds you. And remember, check out www.fractaljournal.com TFJVlog.com.